Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll go over a quite controversial and potentially explosive topic. It is the topic of wild gardens contra the more formalized or formal gardens. And it is an explosive topic, but I'll weigh in on the debate. You see, I have lived in my area of the world for about 12 years now. I've grown my rose garden, and in that time I have seen wildlife gardens pop up around me, and I've noticed some tendencies when normal people do wildlife gardens that I kind of think defeats the point of a wildlife garden, and I want to touch on that. So you see, what happens when most normal people do wildlife gardening is they go out and buy a bag of seeds. Typically it's cornflowers, and it's often other kinds of more wild flowers. And then they go out and spread that out in their garden, and they think that is that. Everything done, right? But you see, the first year it might look okay, but what starts happening then? You see, there's something called grass, and the grass gently starts outcompeting the wildflowers. This starts choking them off. And it is really these modern varieties of grass, these hybridized grass variants, can simply choke off nearly anything. And there's so very few things. You have dandelions, and you have a few other things that can stand up to modern grass. But what often happens is people will hand out all these seeds and spread them out into the garden. Looks good the first year. The second year the grass is almost choking it, but there's still some of the tougher varieties left. And by third year it is completely overgrown and it is just grass. And that leads me to a main point. Like, if you're just going to let grass choke out all of the wildflowers, then it's not really a wildlife garden, is it? It is more of a occasional spotty wildlife garden with a whole lot of grass. And that leads me back to a crucial point. Like, take my garden, for example. In my garden, there's like, at any given time, there's like 300 to 400 perennials. There's 400 roses. There's, I think I grow over possibly like 800 different plants, really. And then take something like most people who buy these bags of wildflowers. But these wildflowers are quickly outcompeted by the grass. Like, what garden do you think has the most variety? A person that buys a bag of wildflowers where there's 30 different varieties of wildflowers, where most of the varieties, maybe except 4 or 8 of them, go extinct because the grass chokes it out? Or do you think it is the garden where there's nearly 800 varieties of different plants and perennials? And that leads me back to a crucial point. Insects don't care if the plant is wild or if it is what we deem a more formal plant. What they care about is simply variety. What they care about is ecosystem. And you can actually create an ecosystem with a formal garden. You just need enough plants. And you just need to create zones in the garden where insects can thrive. For example, you can have an area with water. You can have an area where you have your compost, where you put all the more decaying, all the dying branches and stuff like that. You can make a whole pile of that, and you'll essentially have created a insect hotel. And you can put some large bushes or something else in front of it, maybe some miscanthus, the tall grass like I do, to hide that in a corner of your garden. So what I'm trying to get at here is no garden, even a wildlife one, is maintenance free. And I sadly think that is what a lot of people that get into wildlife gardening thinks. Like, I'll just spray out all these 30 different seeds and things will be golden, right? But what most people forget is plants outcompete each other, and you know what? We have bred grass to be so resilient that most plants can't stand up to it. Really, if you let a garden alone, a wildlife garden alone for long, you will find these modern varieties of grass will simply just choke it off, and then you'll have like one wildlife plant here and one wildlife plant there, but a whole lot of grass. And maybe you'll get some what are they called? It's not echolea, it's the you know, the little ones where they get this. I can't remember the name in English right now, but there are some flowers that can stand up to grass, but really it is not a lot. It's things like daffodils, as I mentioned, also moss. Moss is a very old plant, so moss can of course stand up to grass. But really it's much more difficult to make plants play well with each other, because plants naturally try to outdo each other, and they don't play nicely always. Maybe sometimes they do, because there are new science now that something like trees share resources through the mycelium network. So there are some research pointing to that, but often when it comes to grass, like, I'm sorry to say, grass will just destroy most plants if you let it. It will simply choke it off. But my main point here is really, if you create a microbiome, there's water, there's broken off branches, there's a lot of different plants. I don't think you should worry that much about insects or diversity, because it'll happen naturally. I often joke that my garden often has more bees, more insects than most of these wildlife gardens. And why is that, you think? Because bees like lavender, they like salvia, they like what is it called, catnip, nepeta, they like thyme, they like all these different plants. And why do we even call one thing a wild plant and the other thing a perennial? It's the same thing. The only difference is the perennials we have deemed to be of value to look at. All of them are wildlife plants, when you think about it. It's just we chose to domesticate some of them, but there's no difference. Like, as long as you maintain a healthy variety of color, you have yellow colors, you have lavender colors, you have red colors, white colors, because some insects will only choose one color. I wouldn't worry that much as long as you have a great amount of diversity. And to be honest, no garden is maintenance free. So really what I'm trying to get at here is, don't always think the wildlife garden is the best choice. If you have the ability to make a really diverse garden and to maintain it, you could do much better than a wildlife garden. But a wildlife garden can outdo these gardens where you just see stones being placed everywhere, driveways, pavement, everything just being totally plastered in that. Of course, a wildlife garden will outdo that. I think that's the good thing about the wildlife movement, is also it places some emphasis on that. So I'm not totally against the wildlife movement, but I also believe that that everything has to be looking from a holistic perspective. Everything has to be in harmony. And this is simply to say, don't go out buying a bag of wildlife seeds and thinking everything will work itself out, because you actually do have to have some skill and knowledge when creating a wildlife garden. And equally, if you have the ability to create a large perennial garden, a large rose garden like I have here, then don't be too worried about the diversity, because honestly, I have so much diversity in my garden right now that I'm honestly not thinking anything is lagging. Like I sometimes have too much diversity. You have deer, you have foxes, you have everything, pheasants and everything walking through my garden on a daily basis. Also, you have rabbits and you have all different kinds of insects, really. And animals are no different than we are, and insects certainly not either. Most where we like to be, animals often tend to like to be also. If there's running water, if there's flowers, if there's trees, and there's life in general, you will see things coming there, and also things thriving there. So think in terms of ecosystems, and I think that is the main issue. Not really if it's a wildlife garden or if it's a formal garden. The issue is thinking in terms of creating an ecosystem, and you can create an ecosystem and still have it look nicely. So the problem is when people just plant one or two plants and the rest of the garden is pavement. That's a problem. And another problem is if people just sow grass everywhere. And look, I get it, because if you have a busy work and you don't have time for gardening, that is oftentimes, like, if I once worked like 80 hours a week, and I totally get being too busy to do gardening, because if you get just one day off for yourself every 11 days or something like that, then gardening is something that doesn't rank high on the list, to be honest, and I totally get that for some people. But I think like gardening is a good skill to choose for one of the skills. If you had to choose a skill for life, I would say gardening is one of the better skills to choose, because it is something that'll keep you busy when you retire. It is a skill that gives you a lot of exercise. Like the benefits of gardening, also just digging the soil, being in contact with all these beneficial bacteria. Like when they do a lot of research, they always show that gardeners live longer than the general population. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Also, when you're outside in nature, there's a lot of these polyphenols and pheromones and a lot of other things given off by trees that relaxes you. That's why we often find nature relaxing. So I can definitely recommend getting into gardening. But as I said before, don't worry too much. If it's not like you should feel pressured into creating a wildlife garden just because that is what is in now. But I would also say maybe don't do a complete pavement garden with nothing growing there, nothing alive. And really think about creating a microbiome. And that is what it all boils down to. Thanks for listening. And you can write your thoughts in the comments and where you stand in the debate. And I'm looking forward to answering to you. Take care out there.